Hello and welcome back to the She is Courageous podcast. I'm Shelly Bosworth and I am very much looking forward to sharing today's episode with you because I want to talk about control. More importantly, what do you do when you can't control everything? That's today's question. So let's just be really, really honest, because I'm going to be. We all like to feel in control, right? Maybe, like me, you sometimes have been do call yourself a control freak. Maybe you don't, that's fine. But there is a reality that every single one of us has situations where we prefer to be in control. And in fairness, feeling out of control absolutely sucks. Now, there's a bit of a sliding scale here. And I am going to talk about how do we navigate the feelings, what comes up when we feel like things are out of control, out of our control. For so many women like each and every one of us who are used to holding it together, whether that's keeping the family going, leading businesses, managing, huge projects at work, a million tabs open in our brains. Seems to be every single woman I know, and it certainly feels like my life. When we are suddenly hit with something that we cannot fix or influence or plan our way out of, something that we can't quite control the way we feel we should be able to, it is bloody uncomfortable. And this is coming from a place of this subject hits home, okay? I definitely have a bit of control freak in me. I've called myself it. I have been called it. My friends used to joke. I've just remembered this actually. My friends used to, certainly my generation, we all grew up with the Friends phenomena around us. And my friends used to call me Monica. Now, when I don't feel in control, I do not like it. But I would challenge anyone please do reach out to me if actually you like not feeling in control. Because I don't think there's anybody out there that goes, yeah, I love that feeling. I love being completely out of control. There's a difference between that and, the adrenaline of something. When we're not in control of situations, when we feel like there's something going on, that we feel like there's something we can't fix, we can't influence, we can't change, and we want to, it can bring all kinds of stuff. For me, it will be literally like the overactive mind at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, trying to mentally solve a situation that potentially doesn't even have a solution or not one that I can provide. For many, and I'm using this control freak, if you're watching me on YouTube, I've just done the inverted commas fingers. When we are in a place of feeling like we should be able to control, we want to control a situation and we can't, we spend way too much time thinking there has to be something I can do. But there is a truth that says sometimes there just isn't. Sometimes you cannot control things. Sometimes you cannot, most of the time you can't control everything, but sometimes there is nothing you can do. And that is deeply uncomfortable for most people. And I guess what I want to do today is really get you thinking about where does it come from and how do you navigate it? So let's just get straight into where does it come from? And there are a multitude of answers. And I always say awareness is the first step of change. You've probably heard me say that before, but actually what I wanted to say there more was awareness is really useful, but it's only useful in the first step. It's not about blame. It's not about going back to change anything because we can't. But it can be really helpful to help us move through if we have some awareness. But this list of examples could go on forever. So where does that need to control come from? Well, it comes from all kinds of situations. It comes from layers and layers of experiences. It comes, like everything does, from everything we've learned. And it might not be really obvious. It might just be as simple as you've always been the one who gets things done. You've always been the one that people look to get stuff done, which means you have this element of responsibility that has been placed upon your shoulders and you've held on to. It might be that you grew up learning not to rely on others. Perhaps you learned others could not be relied on. Or a different version of that is you might have grown up learning that it's really important to be independent, resourceful, and be able to take care of everything on your own. Or maybe life just threw you some curveballs that taught you it's safer to stay in control, because when you let go, things fall apart. When you let others take the lead or take control, things fall apart. All of this is about learned experiences, because it's those learned experiences, it's those learned behaviours that become our identity. And in this situation, when it comes to the kind of the control piece, what can often happen, those that have a really strong attachment to control, and I'm just going to talk about that word in a second, but those that do have this, those that this is really resonating with, are often, their identity often becomes things like, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's like the reliable one, the strong one, the organiser, the fixer, the problem solver. And like everything, when we start to look at where those certain behaviours come from, I just want to remind you again, it's not about blame. It's simply about understanding ourselves. And if we can see, like very often, and this is really simplistic how I'm about to say it, it's not quite as easy as this, but it is this simple. When we can see where something might stem from, it can make it easier to let go of that, because we can realise, hey, that stems from something from years and years ago, and actually that's not who I am now. Now, again, using me as the example, and I do have a bit of a tendency to like to be in control of situations, okay? Some of that is because if I'm in control, it takes away uncertainty. And if you've ever heard me talk about anything to do with the brain, you will have heard me say the brain does not like uncertainty. Now, really simplistically, here's where I think some of my control needs come from. I'm the eldest of 4 girls. There was a time in my childhood, in my kind of latter stages of childhood into teen years, where my mum wasn't very well, my dad had to go to work, and my role was to be helpful. I was absolutely told, I needed to be grown up and responsible, and sometimes that meant looking after my younger sisters. So my identity became part of being the eldest of 4 girls, being responsible, being the one to set a good example. I was often told that as a child, you need to set a good example, your sisters are watching. But it also became about, sometimes taking on, and I'm not saying this was pushed upon me, but, almost taking on a grown-up role as a child, telling my sisters what to do, quite frankly. I was very bossy. I was labelled as bossy. Now, some might say not surprisingly, but years later, I went off into the working world, and I very quickly built a reputation of being organised, responsible, taking the lead. I went into leadership roles very quickly. Now, responsibility brings a sense of control with it. And that can be ego boosting as much as anything. And I'll absolutely raise my hand and say, I would, now that I can see my behaviours, now that I can look back and understand as much as I do with the work that I do, that part of my desire to be in leadership roles, as much as I loved all the material outputs I got in terms of the salary and the house, the car, etc., I liked leading because I liked the feeling of being in control of certain things. I was good at it, but I liked it as well. I liked what it brought for me. I liked that people saw me as responsible leader, that people liked me to take control. I liked that feeling. Perhaps, if I'm honest, it brought an element of feeling powerful with it. And that's okay. None of this is about right or wrong. It's about kind of understanding it, because, like everything, it works until it doesn't. Now, I've just had one of those moments. This happens quite often in these episodes, doesn't it? Where I've had a flashback. I remember a boss of mine quite early in my career saying, what you need to remember, Shelley, is every strength overplayed can and will become your greatest opportunity. Your greatest strength overplayed can be your greatest opportunity. Now, I've just said to you, I liked leading. I was good at it. I was responsible. I wasn't afraid to take the lead in things. I wasn't afraid to make decisions. I was quite ego boosting as much as anything. But this episode is about actually, how do you cope when you're not in control? So having a strength in being able to take control of a situation is great. Someone's got to. We can't all just wait for everybody to take action or, to make a decision. But sometimes the need for control overplayed plays against me and probably plays against you too. Because actually needing to control everything, and I want to really intonate that word, liking having control of certain things, being good at taking control of certain things, that can be a strength. But needing to control everything isn't a strength. Actually, it's very often a coping mechanism. And it's a bloody exhausting one. Now, there is a very big difference between responsible leadership, organiser, and needing to be in control of everything. Now, I just want to be really clear here as well, because I'm very conscious of the word control, and it could be quite triggering for some people. So I want to just be really clear about my positioning of today's episode. I am talking about normal people, average people's need for control. This isn't an episode leaning into the extremes of control in a very negative way in relationships, let's say, personal or professional. And I'm very aware that in itself is a very different subject and maybe one that gets added to the list for another day. This is about normal people, normal need for control, because we've all got a little bit of it in us, and where it can play out unhelpfully for you. Okay, I just want to be really clear about that. So here's the problem with this need inside us to be in control of everything and what that control gives you. Because the flip is, and this is like when we're playing at the extreme, when things then feel out of control, when we do not feel like we have control, here's how it can start to look. It can start to look like play out being really snappy with the people you love. It can start to be like doing hundreds of things to feel productive, but not actually moving the needle. It's busy. Like when people need to be in control, it can be about being really, really busy. It can become a situation where you're second guessing every decision. It can be saying yes to things just to stay involved, just to stay in that feeling of control. I can't step out. I can't say no. I can't not be involved because then I'll lose control. It can also play out in almost fixating on other people's problems, because actually it's easier to deal with easier to deal with theirs, because you can take control of other people. You can absolutely feel an element of control when you're trying to help other people with their problems than you can with your own. Because when we need to feel in control and actually perhaps don't feel completely in control of what's going on for ourselves, what can happen is we therefore misdirect, if you like, our energies somewhere else, so that we're still getting that feeling that we need, that hit of control. Now, again, that's not an exhaustive list, but if any of that is sounding familiar to you, here's what I want to help you with. Here's what you can do instead. Now, like everything in this podcast, these are short, sharp, top line, but I hope really helpful episodes. If this is something that this is resonating for you, and I'm not talking about extreme levels, but actually you know that your need for control sometimes gets in the way, sometimes misdirects, it's causing you some challenges and not getting you where you want to get to. This is exactly the kind of stuff we work on all the time in the She Is Courageous Collective, and I just want to throw that in there. But let me give you some tips right now. What can you do instead? What can you do? What can you focus on to help you navigate the feeling of not being in control? Because, oh my God, like, have you ever had anyone say to you, just let it go? Just let it go. First of all, not a strategy. Second of all, downright annoying. If I could just let it go, don't you think I would? Personally, that makes me even more frustrated. And if I'm really honest, probably even more determined to hold on to control. So let it go is not what I'm about to say to you. What I want to do is give you some really simple, almost steps, if you like, to navigate what starts to come up for you when you recognise and acknowledge you can't control everything. Because you cannot control everything. This is an everyday occurrence. But specifically when things are moving out of your control and it's bringing up stuff for you. Okay, so what do? First of all, it's not a let it go strategy, but there is a piece about acceptance. Now, what do I mean by acceptance? Acceptance is not saying let it go. Actually, what I mean by acceptance is honesty with yourself. It's saying, this is what's happening. I don't like it, but I can't stop. I can't stop it. I can't change it. I can't fight reality. Because actually what it's doing is draining your energy. Whereas acceptance and acknowledgement gives you space to respond. It redirects where your energy is going, because your energy at the moment is over and I've got to try and find a solution. I've got to take back control. Actually, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying give up, I'm saying accept and let's redirect the energy. By acceptance, you give yourself space to respond. Then what you've got to really think about, and you'll have all heard of spheres of influence, right? Maybe you haven't. So apologies, actually, that's very assumptive of me. So what we have to do is remember or learn and focus on our spheres of influence. What do I mean? Well, there are 3 buckets. What you can control, what you can influence, and what is completely out of your hands. Now, when you stop and really give yourself perspective on those 3 buckets, it's incredible, because you have a moment of, oh my gosh, I'm putting so much energy into potentially something I cannot control. I can't even influence. Here's what you can control: your reactions, your choices, your boundaries, your brain, your thoughts. You can control those things. So remember what you can control. You can control you. Remember what you can influence. You can influence how you communicate. You can influence how you show up. You can influence how you behave, respond. You can influence others, but you cannot control others. You can influence via how you communicate, how you show up, how you behave. But here's what's completely out of your hands: other people's behaviour. Outcomes. There's a wonderful phrase. I first learned it when I was dabbling in network marketing, and it was detach from the outcome. And at first I was like, oh my God, how do you do that? Like, you talk to me about having goals and then you say detach from the outcome. We cannot control an outcome. We can only ever take responsibility and have control of our input. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how others are going to react. We don't know what people are or aren't going to do. We cannot control the future, the very next moment. So you have to focus your energy where you actually have the power. Reclaim your agency there. What can you control? What can you influence? What is completely out of your hands? And in these moments of feeling like things are out of our control, asking yourself, do I actually have any control over that? Can I even influence what's happening? Or is it actually completely out of my hands? And that's the acceptance I need to have. Back to step 1. Focus your energy where it will actually make a difference. Then anchor yourself with one small action. When life feels really chaotic, when things feel out of control, if you can create some form of, I guess almost like mini ritual that grounds you, it can be so helpful. Now, this isn't necessarily about taking an action towards gaining control. It's not, in fact, it's not that at all. It's taking an action that will anchor you. Stepping away, taking a walk, grabbing your journal and letting go of how you're feeling. Sending a voice note to a friend. Like I talked about misdirection earlier on. Well, you can take control of that direction of where your thoughts go. It doesn't have to solve anything. But what it can do is give your moment, your moment. It can give your brain a moment of certainty. Remember, your brain doesn't like uncertainty. So you can take control in a different way, on something differently. Something else that can be really helpful is say it out loud. And I mean, say out loud, I feel out of control right now. One of the worst things we do is we keep everything inside our mind and it just gets really jumbled. And when we're feeling out of control and a bit overwhelmed, it's not helpful to have it in the brain. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just needs to be honest. Just saying, either to yourself or to someone else, I feel out of control right now. Like if I were to say to my husband, I just need to tell you, I feel out of control right now. I would feel better saying it. I don't even need him to give me an answer or a solution. He might feel like he's got to, but he doesn't. When you name it, when you say, and it's not about giving it a name, but when you say it out loud, what you're actually doing is saying, I'm not pretending I'm okay anymore, because I'm not. I feel out of control. And that in itself can be such a relief. You know, problem shared is a problem halved and all that. Ask yourself, back to what's completely out of your hands versus what's in your control, in your influence. Ask yourself this question: is this mine? So much of what we try to control was never actually ours to carry. When we are people, and I'm using the we term because this is, I've said it already, this is close to home for me. When we are these people, very often what we're trying to control isn't even ours to carry. You do not need to manage every mood, fix every conflict, or hold everyone else's emotional well-being. You can't. So give yourself permission to do enough. Of course, be there for people, support people, but you cannot fix everyone else's lives, fix everyone else's business challenges. And I said it earlier on, sometimes we put ourselves into other people's because it's easier than facing into our own. Actually, the one thing you can control is you, your reactions, your choices, your boundaries, what you are doing about what you want for your world. So give yourself permission to do enough to support, but not everything. When you give up the need to control everything, you actually create space. Space for you to have clarity. I'm always talking about space for clarity. Space for you to show up for you. Space for, I'm going to use the word, we used the word peace in a networking meeting I was in this week, and it gave me a really different view of the word peace. That might be another episode. When you give up the need to control everything, you create space for you, and that is where your courage is sitting, waiting for you. This is about being intentional. It's not about going to the other end of the extreme. So not needing to control everything doesn't mean you go passive and you don't have a view on anything. It's about being intentional. So if you are listening to this and thinking, oh my God, like this is me, I want you to hear this. You do not need to be in control of everything. You do not need to control everything. Some of the best experiences will come from the uncertainty. The best learnings definitely will. Control what you can control, and that is you. Take a breath and just pick one thing that you can do today and do it. That's how you have control. Have control of your choices. Have control of what you decide to do for you today. And the ripple effect of whatever you might do for you today will probably be for all the people that matter to you. Every time any one of my clients has started to ease off, and myself, remember I've said this is close to home, every time that I have, or my clients or members of the collective have eased off that need to control every single detail, I can promise you life has not gone off the rails. It hasn't all gone to hell in a handbag. In fact, quite the opposite. It started working better. If this is something you are working on, if you are in that space of trying to let go of what you can't control and focus on what really matters, but you're finding it really difficult, you don't have to do that alone. Reach out to people you trust. Don't struggle alone. In fact, this is exactly why I created the She is Courageous Collective. For exactly these moments when we need to turn to others that get it. Other women that are working on exactly this kind of stuff in real life. If you're looking for that space, the link is in the show notes. Come join us. But most importantly, just remember, control what you can control. You do not need to control everything. You cannot control everything. Focus on what you can.